Welcome back to Raise TV and Raise Podcast. This is your host, your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. Raise Podcast and Raise TV show brings future thought leaders inspiration, mentorship, and community to help you find wealth in your voice. Got to find a lozenge for my voice today. Again, to help you find wealth in your voice. Thank you so much for joining us. This is, again, your virtual big brother, Ray Collazo. You can subscribe to the podcast version of Raise Podcast on iTunes or anywhere you can download a podcast, or just visit raisepodcast.com. Again, that's raisepodcast.com. Raise Podcast is part of the Latino Talk Network, and it also includes our homies at latinosportstalk.com. Thank you again so much for joining us. This is going to be a great conversation. And for those, my brothers and sisters on Blab, thank you so much for joining Raise TV show. And those listening to the podcast, y'all are missing it. You got to check us out on this live video streaming version of the show. It's really happening here on Blab every Tuesday and Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, 9% Central, and whatever time zone it is in Arizona. You can check us out at blab.im/race podcast. You can chat or even join the video conference. So you got to get down with the Blab, y'all. It is the future. Wanted to introduce a very special guest today. We're going to be talking about management, building your dream teams and your organizations. And indeed, our very special guest has actually clued us in on the 12 commandments of management, which we're going to get into today. So for particularly new managers in nonprofit organizations, or people that are just trying to build a team, a student club, a business, this is a must listen. And we're so blessed to have a great friend to the podcast. Mike Toledo has extensive executive experience in both the nonprofit and financial sector. And our homie is a presidential leadership scholar. Talk about the come up from the hood, no doubt about it. Familia, welcome a very special guest and a great friend, Mike Toledo. Welcome to Race Podcast.
Big brother Ray, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be on. I'm excited to have some courageous conversation today.
Absolutely. And for those new to the Mike Toledo experience, brother, why don't you share with people a little bit about yourself and where you're calling in from today?
Sure. Calling in from Reading, Pennsylvania, born and raised here in Reading, and doing some work here in the community as executive director of the Centro Hispano here in Reading, an organization that's been serving the Latino community for the last 50 years here in Reading. So excited to be doing the work that I'm doing. As you mentioned earlier, worked for 17 years in finance, for financial service organizations, for banks, and that experience helped me along the way to the work that I'm doing today. And I'm very excited to be sharing a little bit of what I've learned in my professional journey with our listeners and viewers.
Absolutely. And this is going to be a great conversation because Mike not only brings nonprofit management experience to the table, but also in the for-profit and particularly the financial sector. And we definitely want to get a flavor for how Mike has transferred some of those leadership skills that he learned in the for-profit world. But Mike, I wanted to share with you, you shared a little bit about your personal background, but again, give people a little more context of your personal journey. Where did this journey as a leader and manager begin for you?
Well, as I mentioned, Ray, it started when I started my career out of college in the banking industry. I was afforded the opportunity as a management trainee in the financial services industry. And, that training helped me to realize, the importance of being able to be a collaborator, to understand the importance of not only working on one's own initiative, but as a member of a team, and really gave me the foundation that I needed to be able to do the work that I'm doing today.
It's really interesting. You talk about teamwork, and you and I saw each other in our daytime lives earlier today, and it was great to see in your home base there in Reading. Usually, you're the one that, as we used to say back in the days, takes the hike, to come to Philadelphia or Washington D.C. or New York City when we collaborate. And it was interesting because I was thinking about, and we talked a little bit about our beloved Eagles during our conversation. Let's see what happens this weekend. But it actually, a quote that even though I'm certainly not a New York Giant fan, a quote that always sticks with me from my life as a sports fan that I think about when I think about this conversation comes from former New York Giant, actually coached the Cowboys, Patriots, a few other teams, I think the Jets at some point. Bill Parcells, when he talked about sort of what was the secret to success with the 2 New York Giants Super Bowl teams he had, and his great quote, which was "Winners assemble as a team." And so teamwork and, sort of how as a manager you really bring people together is really going to be the theme for this conversation. We have a special place in our heart for people that are either newer management, so maybe you're a younger professional that's now finally gotten the opportunity to guide other people within your space, and of course people in the nonprofit sector who do such great work and are often not given nearly enough credit, certainly probably not paid enough, as Mike would attest to. But so today what we want to do here on Race TV, and again, Felix Montalada, one of our great friends, has joined us. Thank you, Felix. And again, thank you all so much for joining us here at Race Podcast and Race TV here on Blab. And so what we want to do today is really lay out from Mike's perspective with my assistance, the 12 commandments of management. And this is going to be a great conversation again for folks that are either trying to hone their management skills, maybe are now managing a different context. Maybe now they have a side business and now they have their first employees or are managing interns for the first time. And there's so many people that every day you're getting these new challenges. So we wanted to share with people some best practices and for things to think about, these 12 commandments to leadership and management. Mike, any thoughts before we get into these 12 nuggets? Any thoughts about, as you compiled, assisted in putting together this list in terms of that comes to mind as before we sort of share these best practices?
No, I just think it's important for individuals to understand that, in terms of managing, it's very important to understand that, clarity drives confidence and confidence drives commitment. So as a leader, if you can be clear about the vision that you have, the direction that you want to take, whether it's an organization you're running, maybe it's a department that you're running, whatever it is, that clarity to the people that you're working with, the people that you're managing, will help them gain some confidence in the direction that you want to take the organization, the department, where you're heading. And with that confidence, we'll gain commitment. So very important. I would say that should be the foundation of young managers in terms of what they want to be for the people that they're leading, the organization, the department that they're leading. That
is excellent. So the first commandment, with you will, which I wanted to put on the table for us to discuss, is that at the end of the day, we often talk about strength and some other qualities as it relates to managers, but I wanted to put on the table here as the first commandment of management and managers that I wanted to discuss with you, Mike, is moral, ethical, and accountable leadership. And I wanted to put moral in the front of that because we often, their management has a lot, in leadership and power have had a lot of different types of brands. I mean, we see even in our modern politics, someone like Donald Trump is viewed as a leader, quote unquote, because of some sort of perceived strength and power that he has. And I think particularly in our community, whether we talk about the Latino community or people that are doing service work, and even in the political space, the moral dimension, I think, is critical because, people will forgive, from my experience, people will give honest mistakes and then experience and other shortcomings as a leader. But if you're not carrying yourself with a certain level of dignity and, quite honestly, moral character, that really can be a disruptive force from the very beginning. What are your thoughts on sort of the characteristics of leaders, that the way I laid it out, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right, Ray. I mean, in terms of, your character and the way that you are seen in the community, in your organization, within your department, you have to lead by example. I like to share with the staff that I have, that I'm blessed to be able to manage, is that in all the work that you do for the organization or out in the community, If you can stand on the rocks of what is right and what is just, you can't be knocked down. And it's very important. So that's the kind of, the kind of leadership I think is very important for individuals that want to be, managers, that want to be at a position where they can lead individuals, and that's what the people who you are going to be leading are going to be looking for. And I think it's very important.
Mike, I wanted to ask you a question about this piece specifically, because one of the dynamics that I've had in my career and you currently have is that in the Latino community, particularly in the kind of work that you're currently doing and that I've done, is that it's a very female dominant area, social services, community activism, community service, nonprofit management. And, being a male leader in that area, there's a certain challenge just being a male leader of, and I'm sure it's the case for your organization, but, a largely female employment base and staff base. So you have any thoughts about that in terms of that extra level of accountability or responsibility you have to basically be a decent dude, and how the women in your organization, the priority they put on that?
Well, I think it's very important. I mean, honestly, knowing that you have, women, men in your organizations, you have to treat everyone with respect, with dignity. They all have a role to play. And again, they look to you as the manager of the organization. They're taking cues from you. So you have to understand you have that added responsibility that's on your shoulders to treat them with respect, to treat them the way that you would want to be treated. Again, I kind of tend to look at it as I want to manage my staff. I want to treat my staff the way that I would treat if my mother was working for me, my daughter was working for me.
Right.
So it's that kind of respect and moral responsibility as a manager you need to have when you're working in a sector, as you mentioned, that predominantly a lot of women are working in that sector.
That's right. And when the male boss is being shiesty for whatever reason, whether it's on personal stuff or there's questions on the finance or just unethical behavior, it just causes such a distraction, and it feeds into sort of the worst in our staff at times in terms of gossiping and drama, and it just feeds it, and then it sort of co-signs other people acting ratchet. So I just can't stress enough that piece, and I think it's so important. Mike, share with us the next commandment of management that we put together here today for our Raised podcast community.
Absolutely, Ray. One of the things that I think is very important for new managers to have and understand is you got to have a plan. You got to have a plan in terms of where is where is the organization or the department now, and where do you want to see it go? Where do you want to take that department? One of the things you have to understand is, as a manager, sometimes managers want to be, they want to do it all. They want to be able to hit all the numbers, or they want to be able to have an impact. And they want to try to be all things to all people. Sometimes you can't do that. You got to narrow your scope, and you got to stick to one or two tangible, goals that you can hit with your team. And again, you have to be deliberate around what you want to achieve, over those next 30, 60, 90 days. Mm-hmm. Having a plan and understanding how to execute on that plan is very important for new managers that are, in a position where they feel they got to do everything all at once.
And that it's really interesting because, I've had, David Castro and my lead on the show in the past. And one of the things we've talked about is this concept of how too oftentimes managers get overly distracted by problems. And so, particularly in our community, we've seen it before that managers, well-intentioned managers, just get caught up in the drama or, sort of focusing on putting out fires when it is the plan piece you're talking about speaking to give people, like you said, a clear vision and something concrete and a clear direction. That, while that can involve obviously goals and metrics, and we're going to talk about those kind of elements of it later, the fact is, as our dear friend Felix Montalada says all the time, and appreciate him joining us today as well on the chat, is that if you don't have a GPS, it doesn't matter if you have a Mercedes, you ain't gonna make it, because if you don't know where you're going, so and how do you with that piece, Mike, how have you find the staff that you've worked with, how does that manifest? What do they want to see as it relates to the plan? Do you feel does your staff, do they want frequent updates? Do they want to see big long-term vision? How have you found that they've accepted that information about the plan the best?
Well, I think communication is so critically important with the staff that you have. I think it's, important, for me, I like to at least weekly let, the members of my staff or my organization know what are the goals for this week? What are we trying to achieve? What do we want to attain? And get their feedback. How are we going to get there? Because it's important to give them ownership as it relates to how we're going to get there. It shouldn't be, that the manager has all the answers, because you don't. The manager is not going to have all the answers. You got to entrust the staff that you put around you. I often tell my staff, I'm only as strong as the team that I have around me. And I depend on you to help us to achieve the goals that we've set for ourselves. So again, it's communicating weekly as it relates to short-term goals, but also letting them know, what are the longer-term goals? What do we want to see for ourselves? How can we push one another to get to that next level? And I think the more you allow your team, your staff to be a part of what you want to do, the more buy-in that you have, the more commitment you're going to have from your team. And I think that's critical, because in our community today, my friend, the noise is everywhere. They can get sidetracked in so many different ways. And so it's important that of all the noise and the voices that they're hearing, that your voice is a prevalent one there in terms of letting them know that they're valued. These are the goals. These are the ways that how we want to get there, and let's get there together.
You have an interesting one as the next commandment. We're talking to nonprofit executive, also has a lot of executive experience in the for-profit world, particularly in financial services. Mike Doleda, the executive director of Centro Hispano in Reading, Pennsylvania. And for y'all who don't know about Reading, as Mike would say, Google it. A lot of history, a lot of great stuff. Part of Reading. Taylor Swift is from the Reading area, just to give people some sort of framework there. So, and of course, I think Kermit Cintron is probably the most famous Latino athlete from the Reading area. So,
you got Donyell Marshall, basketball player. So,
you got some athletes. You got a boxer. A couple. Well, Kerry Collins is from Berks County. So, and I think isn't those clowns, the folks with the 8 kids are from out your way, aren't they?
What? I don't know exactly what you're talking about. What is that?
The reality shows like Kate with 8.
Oh, okay, yeah, the +1, +8 or something like that. Yeah. I'm not into the reality games, but I know what you're talking about. You're from Berks County, unfortunately.
You're a serious cat, brother. What can I say? So, Mike, you've got your next commandment is very interesting, and it relates to what someone has to, something very important for managers to grapple with.
Well, what I think it's very important to as a manager, you have to find your voice. Okay, what is your voice? I find for me that I am not a micromanager. I am not somebody that's going to be on my team to try to find out if they're delivering on their expectations. Are they doing the work that needs to be done? I need to trust that my team is going to hold themselves accountable to the goals that we've agreed that we want to try to achieve. So, that voice of being very supportive, I like to call it leading from behind. You don't always have to be up front in terms of trying to achieve whatever the stated goal is. But if you can lead from behind, show the team that they're valued, let them know, even if they may be doing something that is not what needs to be done. I mean, you could say, look, this is not right, start all over. or you could say, you know what, this is a good start, but let's take it even further. Let's work. Let's build on this. It's all about how you deliver the message that you can get your team to maximize their effort. So finding your voice as a young manager, I think, is very important, Ray.
You know, and that is a really interesting point. I know you're going to get into how to deliver certain types of communications later in the commandments, but it's interesting that a good friend is on the blab there, brother. Well, she needs to join this conversation, no question about it. Our great friend Sonia Troche in the building, in the cyber building. We need her. You talk about a manager. I said una mujer fuerte. Saludos, Sonia.
I'm afraid of Sonia.
Yeah, you know it. You talk about a boss, you know. So no doubt about it. So fellow Scorpio as well. So anyway, so the always Sonia again. We have 2 seats, so we'd love to have you here on Race Podcast and Race TV. And certainly chime in on the chat line, Sonia, with your comments. We'd love to hear your feedback on this conversation around the 12 commandments of management here on Race Podcast. I wanted to ask you, Mike, on this piece around finding your voice as a manager. I think that there's a stereotype that managers have to be like these loud type A personalities. They have to be like, they have to be brusque and they be loud. They got to be, and I find that a lot of times people that are either introverted or have different kind of styles feel they can't be managers or they don't have the same kind of confidence. And I've shared on different episodes of Race Podcast that some of the best managers and leaders that I know are very quiet. They're very introverted, and they, because they bring other skills to the table. And even in that quietness and even that stoic, it instills confidence. So can you talk a little bit about, for people that maybe aren't those, that just aren't just those incredibly extemporaneous kind of people, tips around how different personality types can find their voices as leaders?
Sure. I mean, I think, again, it's very important, depending on the staff that you have and the type of leader that you are, you're going to have to adjust, adapt, and overcome to the team that you have around you. So I agree with you. I'm not one that is over the top in terms of my leadership style. I like to make my staff feel that I'm on the same side of the table with them as it relates to the goals and what we want to achieve. I think as managers, as long as we are clear and concise, again, around what our mission is, around the value that we put on the people that we manage, you don't have to be the manager that, that beats somebody over the head to get them to provide results, to drive results. Again, there's always a method, but it depends on, again, the team that you have around you. Depends on how you deliver a message. And again, I think the team will respect you if you come towards them as, with the fact that they're valued. These are the goals that we want to achieve. How can we do that collectively? Help me to understand what you need to be successful.
That's right.
So I think with that kind of mindset, or an open mindset, different managers have different management styles. No, not one is any better than the other. But you just have to, again, that goes back to finding your voice, understanding the team that you have around you for the goals that you want to achieve.
The next, why don't you share, Mike, your next commandment? And it really speaks to modeling the kind of behavior you need to have as a leader and to build the dream team you want with your organization.
Well, I think it's important for, young managers to realize that you want to be the boss that you'd want to have. I mean, in terms of, the kind of boss that would help motivate you, the boss that would get you to perform at an optimal level. And, so what would make you work, what would help you to succeed. So be that boss. A lot of bosses, like you mentioned, they don't know, do I need to be this? Do I need to be that? Well, the way that I see people, manage, I guess I got to change the way that I am. No, just look to what will motivate you, what will engage you. Be that kind of boss. And I think that's a good start for young managers that are trying to figure out a way to, how they want to motivate the team that they have.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And, that's so very interesting because, there's been lots of talk in in the kind of circles we've been lucky enough to be in, Mike, about leadership styles and sort of best practices. And one of the concepts that I think has been, it's not easy, but I think it's a good exercise for our teams to look at and to train them on, is this concept of managing up. So if you want to be a manager one day, or you want to increase your management profile, you want to think about how you're engaging your higher up and your senior manager. So, there's lots of tricks to that. That's another episode we can discuss, kind of get more in depth with that, with people that are in different levels of management and in organization. But it's, but you're absolutely right. I mean, when you think about what kind of manager you should be, you should think about what kind of manager that have worked for you. Mike, in your experience, is there a manager or a management lesson that sort of taught you that in your own career?
Well, yeah, I had a manager that, again, he was somebody that, every now and again, you're blessed to find a manager that sees something in you that you didn't see in yourself. And he was someone that would, take me in on when we had one-on-one sessions, and would just, ask questions, help me to think critically about, where I saw myself today, where I wanted to see myself, 3 years from now. And, talk to me about how, he wanted to support that effort, help me get to where I wanted to go. And, so that was very important to me. That stuck with me, and is something that I try to do as part of who I am as a manager today with the organization that I run. I am always trying to look for opportunities for my staff to grow professionally, to have a more of a positive impact in the community that we're serving. Because in an organization like ours, the more individuals that we can put out in the community doing great things, I think it helps to improve the quality of life for the community that we serve. So that, for me, having that mentor sit me down and take a vested interest in what I was doing and where I wanted to go, helped me in terms of, part of the foundation of how I want to be as a manager today.
Yeah, no, and again, you're listening to Mike Toledo, the executive director of the Centro Hispano and the Hispanic Center in Reading, Pennsylvania. And again, as Mike says, if you don't know about Reading, Google it. There's a lot going on there in Central PA, not too far from Philadelphia and many other communities on the Northeast, right in the heart of the 222 corridor. Mike's got extensive executive experience, not only in the nonprofit sector, but in the financial sector. And he's really sharing he's dropping some dimes here on Race Podcast and Race TV. And again, if you're listening to Race Podcast, really appreciate it. Definitely subscribe to our podcast at rayspodcast.com, as well as, subscribe to us on iTunes and anywhere you can check out a podcast. Google Play will be offering podcasts early in 2016, Mike. So we're going to have even a larger platform to share the podcast. And if you're checking us out on Blab, like our wonderful friends like Felix and Sonia, muchas gracias. And, got to get with this Blab, y'all. If you're listening to this podcast, you don't know about Blab, go to blab.im/Race Podcast and get with it. This new medium. Mike, what do you think about this new technology and this new form to communicate? I know it's intriguing to you.
I tell you what, I'm a newbie. Tonight's the first night. When you were talking to me about it, I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you serious? You can do this kind of thing?
I'll tell you what.
And this is like warp speed for me. Like I said, I'm a newbie. But this is exciting. What a great way to be able to collaborate with people, talk about things that are important and people want to hear. It's great. It's great. I love it. And hopefully this is just the first of many opportunities for us to be able to get out there and share some nuggets of information for those that are interested, so that we can share and we can learn from others. So it's great. So thanks for having me, Ray.
I appreciate it, Mike. And we're going to have you, as they vote in Chicago, early and often here at Race Podcast, Race TV. So, of course, our compañera in Reading, Mariela. She's got an open invitation as well. A lot of talent in your part of the country. The other thing I wanted to, we have a question from our dear friend Felix Montelara, which is very interesting. Felix chimes in on the chat line. His question is, he'd like us to discuss some of the dynamics as you manage volunteers versus paid staff. Now, this is a really interesting one because, I mean, there's certain nuances, and Mike, it'd be interesting to, I know with your community work, you deal with volunteerism all the time. Poppy, just give me a second. I'm got my assistant producer here on the side here, my youngest son. He's a night owl like his daddy. Everyone else is asleep here in the palatial Race Podcast studios. But the as hard as it is to say this, because it's easier said than done, but I think it's true, the axiom of you got to treat them the same, because you've got to provide the same kind of accountable leadership, the same kind of vision, the same kind of plan, the same kind of clarity. So how have you seen that play out in your career, particularly in social services, Mike?
Well, you know what, it's a great question, Felix. I appreciate you asking. You know, at the organization that I lead now, we have 23 staff, paid staff, but we also have at least 20 to 25 volunteers. And, you know, with the paid staff, obviously they're coming to work because they love the mission, because they love working with people. But, I mean, let's keep it real. They're getting paid. So they're coming to earn a paycheck. The volunteers, again, you have to, you know, take it a little bit to the next level with the volunteers, because, again, a volunteer is just that. They could leave at any time. So letting the volunteers know how important the work that they do, what it means to us, the fact that, you know, the volunteers are earning experience that can help them in the future in terms of where they may want to go with their professional lives. And just the commitment, letting them know that as a volunteer, the commitment they're making is so valued to an organization like ours as a nonprofit. You know, we couldn't deliver on our mission if it wasn't for the work of our volunteers. Again, our paid staff is our paid staff, but the work that our volunteers do to complement our employees, I couldn't put a price tag on it. But it is, you know, you need to manage the volunteers into this, they're showing the same respect, the same value you would give as the employees. But sometimes you find yourself doing a little bit more because you want to retain those volunteers. Yeah, that's very important.
That's right. And we're going to have some of these other commandments in a moment. Sonia Troche chimes in on the chat line for those listening on the podcast. The process of bringing on volunteers is extremely important to organizations, and keeping them engaged and motivated is also very important. So engage, that's a very powerful one, Sonia. If you get a moment, Sonia, definitely share on the chat line. If you're not able to join us, we'd love to have you join us. Of course, on the video seat here, you have 2 more seats, and you're always welcome here, Sonia. If you have any thoughts that you could share with us about the engagement piece, Sonia, definitely would love to pick your brain a little bit more on that. So feel free to share either on the chat or on the video screen. You know, the other thing, kind of bringing this back, Mike, to kind of the group, and I think there's something that's very important for the group to come together as a team, is I think it's absolutely critically important, mandatory as far as I'm concerned, for everyone in your organization to have an opportunity to share their why with the team. And so this, you know, basically the concept of their why is essentially, you know, why they're passionate or why they do the work they do. And obviously in social services, nonprofits, and community activism, you know, that's a little more obvious and clear. But I think it's really important for all of us to know that, because you can make assumptions. And so I remember when, as you know, Mike, in different iterations of my activism career, I've run, you know, large systems of organizing teams and groups. And so I recall when we, kind of did this exercise with a team I had many years ago, that there was some women, there were immigrant women, a little older on average than the rest of most of the staff. And just, you know, when they talked about how personal the work was and how important it was to them as new Americans, in this case, they were immigrants, and how this work validated them. It was so personal for them. And, you know, quite honestly, you know, these were folks that people thought of like their mom or their titi, you know, I mean, I don't think most of us really had sat and really thought about these people's personal journeys. And so when you kind of hear these, you know, when you open up, you provide people an opportunity to really share the why in a way where they can feel vulnerable and really sort of bond with the team. You kind of get those, you know, deal with those scars together. I think it's very powerful. And I wanted to get your thoughts, Mike, about the importance of everyone having opportunity in your organization to share their why with the group.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head, Ray. I mean, again, in terms of, from the Hispanic Center's perspective or from a nonprofit perspective, our staff, and I hear this all the time, is they say they love the work that they do because every day they know that they're having a positive impact on someone's life. Whether it was helping somebody come in with a translation of a letter, whether it was someone that needed housing support, and it can be as extreme as, someone is being battered and abused, and they're looking for protection from the batterer. They see so many different cases and are able to provide support, guidance, direction. And it is knowing that at the end of the day, you did just a little bit to help someone's life, to improve their quality of life. That's what keeps them, engaged. That's what keeps them committed to the mission. And, again, as a manager, you need to embrace that. You need to value that and validate that, yes, you are having a positive impact. Because, in the nonprofit space, I mean, again, they don't, the pay is not what it should be for the work that we do. And they could leave and go elsewhere and get paid more. But because of the impact they are having in the lives of the people in their community, they're committed. They stay. I'm very blessed to have a staff that averages 10 years or more. That is the passion that they have for the service that they're providing in this community that I'm lucky to lead.
That's right. And the other thing is that we just never know. It's when you provide people an opportunity. I mean, there's people I've managed for years, and until you kind of create that space to really sit around as equals in that kind of setting to really share from that kind of personal perspective, you just never know. I just remember having a staffer that was very educated, who I perceived as growing up middle class, I guess, for lack of a better term, and was very quiet, not someone that talked a lot about their personal life or, sort of kind of was it when they were at work, they were working. And the story of when they opened up about the story of their mother being a single mother, and I didn't know that, and what their mother had to go through to, first of all, just get to this country, and second of all, to not only, in her own career, her mother's career, service our country in various ways, and the example she set and the legacy she wanted to continue for her mother. I mean, I'm tearing up thinking about it. I mean, and it was not the person, it was not the answer that I expected from this particular person. So you make even with the people with best intentions, make assumptions about people, their background, their profile, and the reality is that there's until you allow people that space to really share in that way, you're never going to truly know. So it's we got a lot of great feedback with Felix and Sonia on the chat line for the benefit of the people that are checking us out as Race Podcast. Felix just has a lot of thoughts on volunteerism, so he's talking about the importance of it for particularly community and politically oriented organizations. He's got a lot of experience, and it's when you have to use limited resources efficiently, it's really important to focus on it. Sonia chimes in. Sonia Troche, one of our great leaders who's currently based in Texas. Volunteers seek meaningful opportunities. That's very important. Oftentimes, we have the volunteers do the grunt work or the stuff that we're too busy, don't want to do, and that's not where they're coming to volunteer in the first place. They contribute to the mission and impact of their family and their community. So, very well said, Sonia. And also, volunteers often have experiences and skills that can be really helpful. So we have to support them and como dicen en Puerto Rico, sacan todo el jugo. ¿Verdad que sí, Felix? So no question about it. The other commandment I wanted to share here, as we're going through the 12 commandments of management, and Mike Dolet was really, as I texted him earlier, people pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for this information. Mike, you're giving it away of your heart and soul here. Very simple, and I'm sure Sonia and the other women listening, watching would attest. Sometimes guys aren't the best at this. We got to listen as managers, as teammates, And oftentimes, one of the things that can be very frustrating for people that work in organizations is that the boss says things like, my door's always open, you could always come talk to me about anything. And then the reality is everyone's walking around with eggshells because they're scared to talk about anything, because of repercussions. They don't feel they have the safe space, and they don't feel they're going to be really listened to. Maybe they'll be heard out, and maybe they won't get punished, or they'll be looked at the wrong way. But is the manager or just the coworker really listening to what's being said, to either manage up, to provide feedback about a particular issue, and just to be heard? Maybe there's a new great idea or a dynamic that's taking place. Mike, any thoughts about the power of listening for team building in an organization?
Critically important, Ray. I mean, in terms of, I try to make it a point every day when I come into the office to go through, the main servicing area. So I get a chance to say good morning to each of the employees as I come in, and just to check their pulse. How are they doing? Is everything okay? What's new? So that, number one, I'm acknowledging them. It's my way of saying, thank you for coming into work today. You're valued. You're going to have a positive impact today. And I appreciate that. I think the ability to make yourself available, to listen to to the team that you have around you is important. Because I will learn more from my staff than my staff will learn from me. And they bring more to the table, again, because there are more of them. They are on the front lines. They are seeing day in and day out. While as a manager, I'm there managing the overall strategic direction of the organization and making sure the lights come on and the heat gets paid. But at the end of the day, they are on the front lines. And so listening to what they're hearing, what they're seeing out on the street, what I as a manager should be aware of is critically important. So I value that, and I make that a part of my management style in terms of embracing the information that they can share for me, because then that helps me to be a better manager.
Mike, I wanted to ask you a question on this listening piece. How have you handled, there's sort of different, you can create different environments for listening, right? So you have the, boss, can I talk to you for a second kind of listening? And obviously, when they knock, they're going to want you to be responsive and open to that kind of discussion. And then there's sort of like group setting type feedback. So where are we going as an organization? What are your thoughts about a potential project? So how have you handled can you think of a best practice or a part of the discussion as it relates to when you have a group conversation, or you're doing either a training or some sort of planning sessions that you found have been helpful?
Well, I think, in terms of, when we have our staff meetings, and again, I think it's a best practice, meeting with the staff at least monthly as a group is very important. I like to do something I learned. We have what I like to call a weather ball. And a weather ball, it could be anything, but we have a little rubber ball at the center. So we just, say that this is the weather ball. And in our meetings, we will pass the ball around. And whoever gets the ball, we will ask them, what is the weather? If they have the ball in their hand, what's the weather? So what's the weather like for them? And they'll use that as a way to communicate with me. So if they're having a great day, they may say, Mr. Toledo, it's a sunny day today. Blue skies, everything's going well. If somebody's having a challenging day, it may be, Mr. Toledo, it's a bit cloudy. I see rain on the horizon. And so it's a way of communicating things that are going, what's working for them, what's not. And it's a way to open up dialogue, with the staff in a way that allows them to share how they're feeling. I think, again, it's very important to be able to do that in an open forum like that. But there may be times where, the employee needs to speak one-on-one with me. And I think it's important as a manager to be able to give that time. Give the time where it's appropriate, because again, you never know what's happening at home. You never know what's happening outside of the office. So again, you have to be able to be there for your staff, because again, their staff is there for you. You got to be there for your staff.
Right. That's right. On that piece, Mike, I wanted to ask you that, and I don't know, well, it'd be great to have Sonia in this conversation. And if Sonia's still there, please, I'd love to hear her chime in on this. Is that as it relates to, I think there's the cultural piece, and I shared this on some of the leadership related shows that we've done. Oh, there you go, girl. What an honor. Have Sonia Throcha in the building. Oh, yeah. Well, let's wait for Sonia. I want Sonia to be part of this conversation. But what I'm getting at, Mike, which I'm going to tee up and I want to get Sonia's comments on, is as it relates to in Latino organizations, the lines between sort of the business and family and togetherness, and making sure that you don't go over the line. And I'm not saying anything unethical, but just the fact that, look, you're from a small community, a lot of people know each other. At times there could be a sense of, I don't know if Sonia's having a tech issue. Can you say something, Sonia? We might be able to hear you but not see you. Hello, Sonia? Can you hear her, Mike? I can't hear her.
No, I can't hear her.
No, you may want to refresh your browser, Sonia. Sonia, especially if you're on a desktop, make sure you're chiming in through Google Chrome or Safari with your browser. Yeah, just refresh, Sonia. It happens with these, there's always quirks. But you know what I'm saying, Mike? Especially you have people that work there for a while. You might be the new boss, but it's like, this is the way we've always done it. We're all friends here. We're all family here. And some of those, making sure that the balance between togetherness and professionalism is in play.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. When I came to the organization, as I shared with you, I came to the organization 5 years ago, but the average employee at the center has been there 10 years. So there was a certain environment, certain way of doing things. And, but as a manager, obviously, you have, a process, you have a vision for what you want to see. And I think it's important for you, as a manager to, again, it's about respecting the current culture or the current environment, but getting the staff to embrace and look forward to what the future vision or the future culture that you want to have within the organization, especially within the Latino community. We're family. Everybody's family. There's that cultural dynamic that you don't necessarily get in the private sector. But in a Latino organization or an organization that, you have a lot of people from the same culture, there are some tendencies there. Again, family drives everything, but it's important to understand, again, as a manager, when you're at work, you are a professional, and the work that needs to be done is following the mission of the organization you are there for, and to provide that professional advice and guidance. There's always a time and place for the personal, family, and that cultural piece. So it's a fine line. It's a fine line that you have to follow. But yeah, it's there, my friend. It's very important as a manager to be able to understand that piece.
Absolutely, and I'll share with you a funny little quirk. But then, well, it's the cultural piece is really interesting. There's lots to this. That's a whole other conversation. The next commandment here, Mike, you wanted to share as it relates to communicating to staff was know how to deliver news, which I think is very provocative. So talk to us more about communicating to your staff.
Yeah, again, I think in terms of, the way that you deliver a message to your staff, I think is so critically important. Again, what good news and bad news. The way that you deliver a message, I like to call it your bedside manner. Again, as a manager, the way that you deliver a message and how, you want your staff to respond to it, you have to be very careful about that. I made the example earlier as it relates to if you have a staff member that maybe is not delivering on expectations, do you want to let them know, what, you're just not getting it? Or, do you share with them, listen, this is okay, but we can do this, let's try this so we get even more from you. So there's a way to deliver. And I think it's very important as managers that your communication tools, the way you deliver a message, is one, again, you have to deliver that message with respect, with the employee understanding that they're valued, and that what you're sharing with them is all done around helping them to grow professionally. And if you can do that, you're gonna have a team that will do anything for you because they know that you are trying to do anything to help them.
And the classic mistake, some of the classic mistakes that have been done in this area is sort of, again, thinking about the bad stereotypes of characteristics of leaders, right? That they're, kind of the Wall Street model, the Trump model, the loud, brash, over the top, angry kind of thing. And then, which doesn't work for me. But the other part is that, and it's one that, when I was a young manager and was, made mistakes, I could have been a lot better about, is that when you get to the point of a review, and this is the first time someone's hearing about an issue, that's way too late. And when, one of the ways that people tune you out is when they feel like they're being blindsided. And so when you sort of are giving people more real-time feedback, they're going to be much going to be more understanding if it's, in the case of something where you have to be more critical, that, this isn't like a gotcha kind of scenario. So, that's just a couple of the dynamics I've seen in this area. And, the other piece, the other commandment, again, we're talking to our friend Mike Toledo, and I told you, Mike, it's 12 commandments, man. It's this is flying by. A lot of great conversation here. You're listening to Race Podcast, where we provide inspiration, mentorship, and community, so you can future thought leaders. In the case of someone like Mike, very soon going to be a nationally recognized management consultant and speaker. Help them find wealth in their voice. Mike, you're a presidential leadership scholar. Tell people about that one, brother. That sounds like quite a thing to put on your resume.
Yeah, I tell you what, I'm very blessed, very blessed. It was an initiative that was spearheaded by the Bush and Clinton libraries, and in support with other libraries, the Lyndon B. Johnson Library, the first Bush Library, the father, and they came to realize the importance of leadership and presidential leadership. Each of the presidents had different skill sets, different ways of providing leadership. Each of them had different crises that they had to deal with during their presidency. So it was learning about what the presidents had to deal with during their time in office. What was their presidential style? What worked for them? What didn't? And being able to come together. I was one of 60 presidential scholars from across the country who were selected to participate in the inaugural class. And I tell you, I was so blessed to have met such incredible people. I mean, we're talking people from the private sector, the public sector, entrepreneurs, military, people in the military. So it was a really diverse group of individuals coming together, learning about, again, the leadership styles of different presidents and how we could incorporate some of those leadership styles in the work that we are doing. But also there was a commitment to taking what we learned and doing some community work back home. And so for me in Reading, it was trying to raise awareness around the importance of voting and the importance of knowing the policies and the platforms of some candidates who were running. So, taking that platform, I was able to partner with the Reading Eagle, which is the local newspaper. And for the first time in its history, the Reading Eagle published a Spanish language voter guide. They had always done one in English for as long as I can remember. But in Reading this year, they published a Spanish language voter guide for the primary and for the general election. And again, that just goes, I mean, that's a game changer for us here in Reading, where the population is 86,000 and 70% of the population is of Latino descent. So it was a way to engage more of the community. And so that was my commitment to the Presidential Scholars. And again, it was a great opportunity. I take what I learned and I'm trying to pay it forward in my community.
That's great, man. And the next time you come on, Mike, we'll probably just have to do a separate show just to go over those lessons from a leadership perspective. And I'm sure people that would be curious about, because I believe you even met our former presidents at your graduation ceremony, if I'm not mistaken. So there's probably a lot there that we could chew on, and some of your other leadership lessons. The next commandment you wanted to discuss, Mike, relates to what's important for a manager to know about what's about their team.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of one thing that's very critically important is you got to be able to know. You got to know what your employees are doing. You have to know the roles that they are playing. In terms of again, as I shared, when you have staff that's on the front lines, you have to know what they're seeing every day. Understand the challenges and the pressure of the work that they do, because they will appreciate that. That will help them to understand that you value the work that they're doing. But also, I would also add that, don't be afraid as a manager to get in the mix. You got to get in the mix with your staff. When your staff sees that the manager is willing to get his hands dirty, willing to work, to achieve a goal, and be a part of what the team is doing, that goes such a long way. So, that's very important as it relates to the team and the staff that you're working with.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that that one's really important because, again, these are sort of the old stereotypes, paradigms of leadership, very top down. And I think as our society gets more diverse, particularly more, I think as women now are getting, thankfully, an opportunity to be more in leadership and management positions. I think we're just thinking about leadership in a much more progressive way, in a much more holistic way, and it is about togetherness. Because the worst thing to see is a boss or someone that thinks their S don't stink. So and it doesn't matter what position or what my role is at an event or organization. If chairs got to be put away, chairs got to be put away. That's just the way we have to think about it. And again, you definitely will get it's a great modeling for new professionals and people that are new to your organization or don't have mentors in management. So it's that's a really important one. Or important too that you mentioned. Another one I wanted to get into the conversation here, and again, we're talking to Mike Toledo, a gentleman with a lot of executive and management experience, a presidential leadership scholar, and someone with lots of experience in nonprofit and financial services management. On this edition of Race Podcast, talking about the 12 commandments of management today. I think it's really important, again, going back to sort of the team building dynamic, is to mix them up. Oftentimes, we can have an organization that's in silos. So the IT people over here, the sales people over here, the people that deal with this program over here, and you essentially create 7 organizations. You don't only have one organization. So I think it's important, whether it's in a team project or in different kind of either team building or training exercises, retreat formats, what have you, is to be deliberate about making sure that there's interdepartmental cooperation and collaboration, even with people that it wouldn't make sense for them to work with. And, I've been in organizations when we weren't even that big, and I didn't know people at the organization, much less what they did. And I think I think that's really important to minimize cliquishness and quite honestly, to really build a team. You're not building 7 teams, you're building one. So, Mike, what's your thoughts about the idea of kind of creating that environment where people are cross collaborating across the organization?
Yeah, Big Brother Ray, you're absolutely right. Cross training.
Well, that's why it's Big Brother Ray's show, brother. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we bring it here. I mean, I tell people we're giving people 6-figure level information. I mean, we're breaking it down, and not just me. It's my razor light. It's all of us, Sonia, Felix, everyone on the chat lines, and the other people that join us. This is where you get the real stuff here.
Yeah, but the cross training piece is so important. I mean, like you mentioned, the working in silos, that's old school. I mean, that's departmentalizing, that's isolation. That don't work today. And as managers, I mean, again, you got to get that out of your mindset. You should be looking to cross train your staff, get them into different roles and responsibilities, because you never know what you might tap into. They may find a skill set that they didn't know that they had, or you may find that they're very good in another space. And that opens up a whole new opportunity for your team. And like I said, I'm all about building staff up. I'm all about helping them find their professional growth. And if I can do that through cross training, through engaging them in different ways to learn, to pushing them maybe to go to school and pick up a training of some sort, I think it's our responsibilities as managers, but not just as managers, but as Latino managers, as people of color in management. We got to help our brothers and sisters to find what is there, where do they want to excel? Where do they want to go to the next level? I mean, we shouldn't be holding anybody back. We got to push them forward. We got to help them to see their potential. And when we can do that, we're all better off.
Let me tell you something on that piece. That's why this exists. Race TV, Race Podcast, the Latino Talk Network, because I'm so passionate. Again, I'll repeat it probably every show I ever do, because there's always somebody that's new, and it's always good to let people know where I'm coming from with this. But that it's interesting because I will meet people. I mean, like the conversation you and I had earlier today, Mike, and the conversation I've had 27 times with Sonia Troche and 7 times with Felix Montelara and so many people around the country. And I'm serious, people all over the country, that there is just so much talent out there, and so much creativity, so much diverse skill sets, so much beauty. And I see that like in every respect. And, all that's real marketable stuff. And when I share with people, I shared with a couple Latinas that are business owners in the Northeast. I said, you all should, and they have a business model that they're successful, but it's very labor intensive, and they're not, they're in our age range. They have young families, and it's just not, it's just not a sustainable business the way they have it currently constructed. And Alma, thank you so much for joining us, talking about management and leadership practices. And again, everyone, thank you for listening to Reese Podcast. And I shared with them, I said, you all should create a business to train women, especially like girlfriends, or like women that are friends, to create businesses together. And wouldn't that be a great business to like teach other women to partner and do business together? And they were just so excited when I said that. I said, that's an 8-figure business. And when I say things like that, and I'm not BSing people, I say stuff like that. I said, that idea is, that business could be a $10 million business. That could be a $7 million business. When I was one of the people that's mentored me in this journey is the only Latina, Mike, in the National Motivational Speakers Hall of Fame. Her name is Bequina Echevarria. We should get her to Reading one day. She is fantastic. She also does stand-up comedy, and she's just awesome. I think she's from the Bronx. I think she's Cuban, but anyway, she's a Latina from the Bronx. And so when I was telling her on one of the shows I was doing about, my vision for this early on, she said, what is this? At the end of the day, what is this going to be? I said, I think it's going to be a media company I'm going to sell for $20 million. And then I caught myself. I was like, shit, did I just say that? And then I almost kind of psychologically and physically almost started backtracking because it shocked me to say it. But she said, you said it. I didn't put that in your heart. And so I just think we just have to allow, as managers, and this even goes beyond this commandments we're talking about is we have to freaking let people know they can do some incredible things. And, you know, I mean, there's just too many examples of people that quite honestly didn't even have the talents and skills that of all the, you know, compared to the people that we're talking about and people like you and other people watching, Mike. So anyway, so I think you're absolutely right. And, you know, this piece goes back to the earlier conversation about listening. You know, I had a staffer once that was in a certain line of work in the organization, and he shared with the management team that he had an interest in technology and media and social media. So he's, over the last few years, in a few different jobs, he's been encouraged by, at times, my organization and at times other organizations to sort of reinvent himself. And now he's doing really well with social media marketing and technology. And it was a very different line of work he was doing. So you're absolutely right. We have to listen, empower people, give people the tools, resources, and, you know, don't be a hater, man. There's so much for everybody, man. We get into that. You know, our homie Felix always talks about the old paradigm about, you know, the crab in a bucket syndrome that we gotta kill. I think we should have a burial ceremony at some point on one of the shows about that dynamic. Mike, give me your last commandment as it relates to management you wanted to share with us today.
Well, I mean, in terms of the last commandment that I will give you is, again, you know, at the end of the day, we have to lead by example. You know, we have to be, you know, for our staff, we have to be the motivator. We have to show them that, you know, the work that we're doing is for the better good, that we're better collectively than we would be individually. And you have a responsibility. Managers have a responsibility to do that. You know, sometimes it's not just about the final result or the end game, but it's the process to get there. How did you positively engage the team, the staff that you have to reach the goals that you've set for the team? How are they better off professionally, personally, because of the journey that you were a part of? You know, not that you led. You know, yeah, you could be the manager, but you don't necessarily have to lead from up front. You can lead from behind. You know, you can be a part of that collective team. So I would just say it's so critically important to understand and appreciate the journey of management versus the end result, because your team won't forget. Your team will always remember that journey. And I think that's important for young managers that are trying to get into the game, you know, to understand.
Absolutely right. And Sonia Troche on the chat line, we got some great conversation here. And unfortunately, I think Sonia and Felix, they're just not on the best. I think Felix is traveling, so they're on the best internet connection, so they're not on the screen. But Sonia asked the question, are there enough outlets for people to help each other and share expertise? My immediate reaction for that was, I think, two things. One is we have to create them. The reality is there probably aren't technically, but we have to create them. And I think as part of that, we have to utilize these tools. And so one of the things that, you know, and I'll ask, you know, it's for us to think about. It's a rhetorical question. Are we masterminding? Are we creating structures like masterminds, like peer groups, like check-ins with like-minded colleagues across organizations, across, you know, across platforms? Are we utilizing the tools? I mean, Blab is a great example. You know, Blab isn't even that known yet. And what's happening is that like-minded people are coming on to share, you know, realtors or people that are dog groomers or people that are in particular interest in technology. They're just coming on here to share best practices. I was on just joining a Blab last night. Dudes that brought, you know, do what I do, internet broadcasting, podcasting. I'm asking about, you know, I'm sharing tips. They're sharing tips. And, you know, that's you know, but that's not a network that exists for me unless I seek it out and on some level help create and foster that. So I think with the modern tools, I think that's the untold story of these tools, is that there's so much in the real world or the, you know, the brick and mortar world. There's just not, the economy struggling, and there's just not a lot of positive reinforcement that people are getting for their dreams. And this is where, you know, this is where you can find it, and it's unfiltered, it's raw, and you can specifically go to the people that you want to connect with. The last amendment that I just wanted to share with people, with a team is acknowledgement is so important. And Mike, wanted to get your quick thoughts on that. But the bottom line is, for me, is that we can never do enough of it. And you can never assume that people don't appreciate it, even if they're, they don't act like they appreciate it. So just any final thoughts on the commandments as it relates to acknowledging your team?
Sure. I mean, acknowledging them at every opportunity goes such a long way. When I'm out with my team and I'm introducing my team in the community, I let those folks know these are the people that I work for. And, and that lets the team know, wow, Mr. Toledo really, believes he's a part of the team. He values us. Acknowledging their value, acknowledging what they bring to the table, acknowledging that the mission of the organization doesn't happen without their support, without their commitment. You will have a hard time leading anyone as a manager if you do not acknowledge the value that they bring to the mission of the organization or the department that you lead.
Absolutely. And Felix Montalada chimes in, successful management is really about, the journey less traveled. And it's really about honoring the hard work of brave men and women in your organizations and that are doing good work and really trying to, because of their why. And I go back to that, it's so important to understand why people are doing the work they do, because, that's the only way you can truly understand how to be supportive of them and to reinforce that why and honor that why. So, Mike Toledo, you've just been an incredible ray of light today. I just want to thank you again. Mike, let people know where they can continue this conversation about management, leadership, the Latino community on social media.
Well, I mean, in terms of, like I said, there's a lot of different areas that you can go to get information, like this. I mean, again, here, I think this is, Ray, what you're doing is incredible. I mean, I think, the work you're doing to bring us together like this. I mean, like I said, this is, I'm a newbie, but I'm hooked. I mean, I think I see a lot of potential for, people to come together, sharing best practices, bringing, people together. Again, I mean, we could change the world, one podcast at a time. And so it's exciting to be a part of it. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of this.
No, this was an incredible conversation and no joke, man. I mean, these are the kind of, and Felix and it's essentially the four people that are in this discussion. I've had this conversation. These four people need to mastermind and need to keep this conversation going, because I mean, it's not as simple. I mean, even as simple as what we broke down here today, I mean, we can build all kind of incredible training opportunities for like-minded managers. And, this can go in a lot of directions. And this is what we do here on Blab TV every Tuesday and Thursday night, 10 p.m. Eastern, 7 p.m. Pacific, and whatever time it is in Arizona. It's always hard to tell. They don't do daylight savings time, Mike. So it's 2 hours, 3 hours. You just don't know. Okay. And it is, I believe, we start the show 9 p.m. Texas time for the benefit of Sonia. You can put it on your clock there, girl. Again, thank you so much for listening to Ray's podcast. If you like what you heard, the kind of inspiration, mentorship, and community for future thought leaders that we support here on the Ray's Podcast Journey, check us out. Subscribe on iTunes to Ray's Podcast, or check out our website, rayspodcast.com. And for those checking this out as a podcast, we're actually going to have you can download if you go to Ray's Podcast, subscribe to our email list, you'll actually get an email with these 12 commandments. So you'll have a PDF with these commandments you can tape on your office desk and sort of use that as a written guide for you. Thank you so much for joining Ray's Podcast, Ray's TV on Blab, and have a fantastic day.